Okay, good morning. Hi, and welcome to this module on representing insights obtained from data. So, we've collected our data, brought it all together, and into a single source. And we've prepared our data. So, in this module, we'll talk about the different kinds of numeric data that you can use in analysis. We'll talk about and see some techniques in plotting continuous data. We'll understand what categorical data means and see a few examples of representing categorical data. We'll also talk about other kinds of data that you might work with for analysis, such as text. And we'll discuss what representations of such data make sense before they can be used in ML or machine models. In our hands-on demos, we'll use Power BI for visualization. Um, Power BI at this point is available only in Windows, but nonetheless, it still offers a very powerful drag and drop visualization. So, um, all of the data that we work with for analysis to build data models, machine learning models, is numeric in nature. The kind of data that is used in analysis is typically divided into two broad categories. The first of this is continuous data. Continuous data can take on a continuous series of values within a range, such as meter readings, in your case. And all of these are examples, as I said, of continuous data. The other kind of data that you might not be more familiar with is categorical data. Categorical data is made up of discrete values. The values assigned to your categorical variable can only be one of a discrete and finite set. So for example, true or false, 0 or 1, the reading date, or the reading interval, which is integer. Uh, so as I said, these are examples of categorical variables, and both continuous as well as categorical data have to be represented in numeric form. Continuous data is usually numeric in nature, as I said, whereas categorical data may be expressed in the form of strings or categories. This categorical data has to be converted to numeric form before it can be used in your models. Whatever features you're working with, whether it's just ordinary numeric features or text, all other forms of data must be converted to either continuous or categorical before you can use them for analysis and feed them in machine learning. Now remember, both continuous as well as categorical values have to be expressed as numbers. So now that we've understood what continuous and categorical variables mean, let's compare and contrast the two. Examples of continuous variables are the height or weight of individuals. They can pick on any value within the range, right? Examples of categorical or discrete values, on the other hand, are the day of the week, the month of the year, well, the gender, male or female, or a letter grade, A, B, C, D, that you might get in your assignments. And it's pretty obvious, as their name suggests, that continuous variables can pick on any value whereas the categorical variables there are a finite set of permissible or discrete values possible. When you're working with machine learning, regression models are what you build to predict the value of a continuous variable. Classification models are what you'll build when you predict output is a category. Another significant difference between continuous and categorical variables is the fact that continuous values can always be sorted based on magnitude. Their magnitudes are significant. So a house costing 1 million pesos is always cheaper than a house costing 2 million pesos. Categories, on the other hand, may or may not be sorted. So you cannot sort male or female. There's really no sorting order here. Or on the other hand, grades A, B, C, yes, that's sortable. Now let's quickly discuss the four types of categorical data that you might work with. First is binary, wherein you only have two permissible values, yes or no, male or female, whereas multi-class categorical variables have multiple permissible values, digits from 0 to 9, days of the week. Next, we have the nominal, which is inherently unordered, I mean. Male or female, days of the week. There's no specific ordering here. Categorical data that is ordinal on the other hand in nature may have a possible ordering. So if you're talking about letter grades, an A is definitely better than a B. So let's talk about text data. Um, Text data is, well, text. But data analysis and machine learning models require your data to be numeric. So how do we do this? In this clip, we'll talk about how we can convert text data to numeric form. So let's consider this document, which is essentially, as you can say, a restaurant review. And this is the text that makes up this document. Model this document as an ordered sequence of words. This will involve splitting this document into words or tokenizing. All of the individual words of this document are extracted and set up in an ordered form. So, when you tokenize, or in order to convert this text document to numeric form, we now have some kind of numeric encoding for each word in this document. So let's say the word this is would be WO. Its numeric encoding is XO. Then we'll have an encoding X1 for the next word and an encoding X2 for the next word, so on and so forth. So that, in general, an encoding XN will be assigned for the nth word in this document. So once all of the individual words have numeric form, this document can be represented now as a tensor or a matrix of numbers. Well, this sounds relatively straightforward, but the interesting detail here is how do we convert every word to a numeric representation? So, as you might imagine, there are several techniques that you can use for this. And here are three broad categories. You can either use one-hot encoding, or a frequency-based encoding, or a prediction-based encoding for your words. I'll now give you a quick overview of how each of these encoding types can represent text in a numeric form, starting with one-hot encoding. So, one-hot encoding sets up a vector to represent every word. The size of this vector is equal to the number of words in the vocabulary of your corpus. And every word in the text is represented by the presence or absence of the word. So a number one for a particular word indicates that a particular word is present in the document. Zero indicates that the word is absent. This is the simplest way to convert text to numeric form, and actually this is widely used. Now, let's now move on to frequency-based encoding. One hot encoding does not tell you how often a particular word occurs in text. Frequency-based encoding does this. There are actually three categories of frequency-based encodings. The vector encodings, which gives you a count of how often a word occurs in a document. Then there is TF-IDF encoding, where TF stands for the term frequency, and IDF stands for inverse document frequency. And finally, you can encode words based on co-occurrences. Co-occurrences capture how often a particular word occurs in the context of its surrounding words. Frequency-based embeddings using count frequency is just a little bit of an improvement over one-hot encoding. This also captures how often a particular word occurs in a document. So instead of using 1 and 0 to represent the presence or absence of a word, we'll say 2 if a word occurs twice in a document, or 3 if it occurs thrice, 3 times. These are the counts or the frequencies. TF-IDF, on the other hand, is a very popular representation that tries to capture how significant a particular word is in a document and across the corpus. The TF-IDF is a combination of term frequency and inverse document frequency. The term frequency tries to capture how often a word occurs in the word, within the document, I mean. And the inverse document frequency tries to capture how often that word occurs across the entire corpus. So here's how TF-IDF generates numeric representations for words. So if a word occurs more frequently in a single document, that word might be important and it's up weighted. However, if a particular word occurs very frequently across the entire corpus, that is probably a common word like a, an, or the, in that case, that word is down weighted. Now, you can also generate numeric embeddings for words based on how often a particular word co-occurs with other words that surround it. So this is based on the idea that similar words will occur together and will have similar contexts. Um, Generating co-occurrence representations involves the use of a context window. This is a window centered around a particular word, and it might include a certain number of neighboring words to the left, to the right, or both. It's also possible to build up a co-occurrence matrix representation of the word using this context window. Co-occurrence is basically the number of times two words, W1 and W2, have occurred together in a context window. Now, of all the possible ways to numerically represent a word, prediction-based embeddings are the most powerful. Prediction-based embeddings try to capture not only the meaning of a particular word, but also the semantic relationships that that word might have with other neighboring words. Generating prediction-based word embeddings involve the use of machine learning models such as neural networks and popular word representations generated using this technique are, for example, Word2Vec and Globe. Now, in this module, um, in addition to Azure Data Studio, which I will not discuss, we'll also visualize our data using Power BI. Power BI is a business analytics app with powerful drag and drop visualization and data exploration capabilities. Power BI is a powerful, simple, and easy to use and closely integrated with Microsoft and Azure Data Services. Now, yeah, we'll have a demo in which we will use Power BI in order to visualize the data. And first, I will show you how to install it, and then we will try to import your data into Power BI and do some simple visualization. So here goes. First, I will share the window. Wait, this is exactly the site will where you will download. Yeah, can you see my screen? This is where you here above here. This is the exact site where you can download your Microsoft Power BI desktop. Just click on this downloaded button here, and you can choose a folder. Well, in my case, I chose this one. Just give me a minute. Okay. I'm going to share my folder. Okay. This is also the folder where I saved your sample data from Edison. So this is actually the download file, PBI desktop setup underscore x64.exe. So if you click on this, which I already did, it will open up Power BI, and let me show you mine. my Power BI. Uh, Give me a second. I will show you my Power BI. There. This is how it looks like. And so as you can see, we have here a top menu, which consists among others how to get data, how to transform your data, how to set up visualizations, and how to publish. So let's try to import the data you gave me. Let's have a sample import. Hmm, okay, good. Give me a second. Okay. So, well, again, actually, I tried importing this data into SQL Server, remember in my previous session, but unfortunately, the size was too big. It's about 100 megabytes and contains maybe close to a million rows. So it was slow. But if you try to import it here, see what happens. Power BI can accommodate, yes, can accommodate that large a size and that many rows. So, yep. So here is a preview window where you can preview your data before loading it. And you can also have a choice to transform. So let's do transformation of data. I'm going to have another session with that. So in this session, let's just try and load this. Let's see what, yes. So it's now loading into our model. See, it's counting. So yes, so Power BI, yep. So based on the statistics there are about 106,000 rows in this table. We can actually view it here, there. So let's minimize this frame on the right. So this is your data. So what can we do initially? So as you can see here below, it says here that it has 107,671 rows. But if we try to filter, see what a particular set of data represents. So maybe let's filter for one particular meter. Let's say let's choose this meter, and then let's choose a particular day. Say the second day of August, and yes. So as you can see, for a particular meter on a particular day, we have these types of register IDs, which I believe duplicates in every other meter. So among others, we have here a clock. And the clock represents a date. So we can have this as maybe a subheader. So first thing I can see here is that from P0 to P62, we have null values. So this is a candidate for cleanup. You either can delete them or amputate them, replace them with values based on certain criteria that I've mentioned in a previous session. And there is also the other values are typically, I believe, are these readings. So on a separate session, we will try to build up visualization based on these readings and try to analyze from those visualizations, maybe the set of readings encompassing the whole month on certain intervals. So I can see here that your meter reading intervals are in 15 minutes. Am I correct? Yeah. So for example, between P64 and P65, we have a 15-minute interval. So I'm just trying to read. I'm trying to infer what these readings mean, but maybe you can supply me that. So with that, I will now conclude this session, and on another session, we will try now to visualize, of course, after cleaning, visualize what we could arrive at, predict using this set of data that you provided me. So thank you and see you on my next session. Thank you.